In fact, this is where us ag science students used to do maths. No wonder we used to call it the Horace Lamb Theatre. So as Tim said, I'm talking about bridging the gap, and as well as Tim, who's chairing today, as he and I work in the Sustainable Soils Group in Juna, in the Conservation and Sustainability Unit. Co-authors Zita Fuster and Kelly Menadue from PIRSA Rural Solutions. We're also involved in reviewing the program that I'm going to be talking about. Now, I'm sure all you good Juna people knew that the title of the talk came from priority number 3 in our corporate plan, bridging the gap between farmers, local government and the natural resource management system. And so here's a NRM person and a farmer shaking hands, bridging the gap. I suspect the farmer's the one with the dirty pants. And particularly working in sustainable soils, this is what's going to happen if we don't bridge that gap. The bridge is going to get obscured by dust, and yes, that dust is from South Australia. I imagine Emma's group that are doing the sediment testing might be getting a few strange outliers in Sydney Harbour with this unknown dust coming halfway across the continent. Now, some of you might wonder what this talk, why I'm in the biodiversity conservation topic in this conference, and I sort of wondered a bit too. But in actual fact, it is absolutely essential to engage farmers in NRM, as within the agricultural landscapes of South Australia, basically everywhere below Goyder's line, the dryland cropping areas of the state, they manage 10 million hectares of cleared land, and within this zone they also manage 2/3 of the remaining native vegetation, and so that's a little bit over 2 million hectares of remaining vegetation. And so I'm primarily now going to talk about a program that we've been running in the Sustainable Soils Group. At the moment it's called Healthy Soils for Premium Food. Some of you might know it as formerly being called the Sustainable Dryland Agriculture Initiative. So since 2009, over 90 sustainable ag partnership projects have been implemented with regional NRM boards and agricultural industry groups, and some of those ag groups you can see in the logos there. And projects were selected on one or more of the following criteria. The project needed to be based on sound science and best practice. It needed to enhance cooperation between NRM and farmers, be innovative, able to add value, able to provide proof of concept, and contribute to South Australian Strategic Plan Target 70 on soil protection. So basically we're trying to prevent this sort of thing happening in South Australia. So the projects will address, or have been addressing, existing threats such as soil erosion and acidity, and also likely threats from climate change. Practices promoted include no-till seeding, stubble retention, improved grazing, perennial pastures and fodder shrubs, cover crops, claying sandy soils, and enhancing on-farm biodiversity. And project activities have included field trials, farm field days, workshops, technical documents, biodiversity property plans, social media, to raise awareness of best practice sustainable dryland activity. And we've also been conducting workshops with Juna staff and from other agencies to help improve communication skills with farmers and understanding of the latest agricultural innovations. So I'll just take, now we have had a number of project reviews of this program, and that's why I had Zita and Kelly up there as co-authors, because they've been reviewing this program. And the key elements that they found for the success of these projects, as well as of course the projects achieving their outcomes, included one or more of the following criteria. The project needed to capture the farmer's interest by providing tailored information suitable to their needs. The project needed to be innovative. The project had to have a credible champion. The project helped change practices in a practical way. And partners, particularly from NRM boards, it was found needed to help support the projects, and also obviously helps a lot of participants in the project are progressive and forward-thinking. So if I just go into some of those criteria in a bit more detail, a good example here of the project filling a key need of stakeholders was this smartphone apps project that we ran. This was actually a bit out of left field when we did this. You know, we took quite a risk because it was sort of before widespread use of smartphones. But one thing with farmers, they take up this sort of technology just before just about anyone else, and they were already using their smartphones a lot, and they were finding that whenever they were doing a search for farming apps, they'd come up with these little farming games and things like that. So with the help of AgX Alliance, we put together the smartphone apps for smart farmers, and it can be downloaded on the AgX Alliance website. And in fact, it's been so successful that we've already come up with another version 2, and that was also co-funded with the SAMDB NRM board. And the other thing we were very fortunate was to have the ability to negotiate and fit with local farmers' needs and interests. We didn't actually have to adhere to strict priorities from targeted funding. And also this flexibility allowed changes of issues addressed during the course of some projects, particularly with adverse events such as drought or bushfire. Now, we've certainly been talking a lot about innovation already today, and so it really helped if the projects were practical and innovative. And so we found that successful projects, many of the successful projects, help change practices in a practical way, such as on-ground works and trials to investigate solutions very much to local problems. And for enhancing skills in biodiversity management, which is, I guess, why people are here, there was a definite preference for on-farm technical extension using innovative tools such as carbon accounting and calculating biodiversity values. But the tailored information, and obviously also if it's innovative, is what really captured interest. And an example here was a study where time-lapse cameras were used to study snail movement, and they were able to work out that to bait the snails in the crops, you needed to bait them earlier in the season. And you might wonder, well, what's this got to do with NRM? Well, the trouble is with snails, if there are too many of them, the farmers will end up burning the crops and so reducing soil vegetation cover on the soil, and so it's important to be able to manage them without burning. Now, I also mentioned about the importance of credible champions endorsing the project. So experienced and respected champions can make a huge difference in helping farmers to accept the need for change and to take risks with new management. So farmers learn well from other farmers and also group workshops. And promotion through credible farming system groups, such as the ones that I mentioned earlier, will also give direct linkages to the target audience. And finally, we've heard a lot about the importance of partnerships this morning, and it's very true when these projects were reviewed that the most successful ones had a range of partners, and just by having that range of delivery staff does instill confidence in farmers that they're receiving holistic advice. The NRM boards and related junior staff have been the main partners involved in most of our successful projects, but also regional land care facilitators have also been essential in many of our projects. One thing with farming groups, it's often good to involve trusted agricultural consultants or agronomists because they're the ones that then spread the message that you want to give to their farmer clients. And of course, when research is involved, it's very important to have your credible research organisations involved. So, we've learnt a lot of lessons on the way, hence the title of the talk, and not only from the successful projects, but from the less successful projects. So particularly with biodiversity management, staff delivering biodiversity projects must have a solid understanding of both sustainable ag and biodiversity management, or certainly work with others that do, and have a clear understanding of what landholder expectations are. And you might wonder where you're going to find such miraculous people with all this expertise, but there's actually a wonderful network of sustainable ag officers across the state in the NRM board, and also those land care facilitators that I was talking about. And indeed, I've got a couple of them pictured here in the photo. Ideally, you should use your information in conjunction with demonstration sites and where local champions can talk about their experience. And approaches that incorporate biodiversity management in conjunction with technical support, and some of these technical programs include NRM Farm or Farm for Profit is a new one. They should work well. So it's obvious that innovative projects work better if they were trialled with a progressive participant and who are willing and able to accept a degree of risk. As one farmer said, if farmers can see the sense in doing something and are supported, then they are likely to do it. There were criticisms when some projects lacked a practical element and were considered too much of a talk fest. I mean, obviously you don't want to have too many events competing with farmers' time, and it's important to provide information in a farmer-friendly format appropriate to regional conditions. I know a lot of this is really obvious, but I guess it's good to hear it again. Finally, there are some areas with inherent problems of low productivity and economic debt, and encouraging practice change is obviously far more difficult in these areas, and probably you need to address issues of debt and viability first. So finally, what leads to a bigger project or maybe additional projects? So trial projects were extended if they were seen as credible by landholders, and we had a sandy soil project in the southeast that was extended for a number of years because it was seen of great value to the landholders. A project officer is usually needed to champion the continuation of a project. That's just the reality of it. We had these communicating with farmer workshops, which certainly, this is the one that a lot of junior participants and other people that work with farmers went to, and it certainly encouraged a bit more innovative extension. People started doing more videos and using other social media, and this tends to suit the learning styles of farmers in particular, particularly if they're doing a lot of time sitting on the tractor. I reckon you can see that farmer tweeting away if you look closely. And in fact, we've been told that Twitter is the #1 social media that farmers use because it's easy. They're out in their tractors, they've got their smartphones, and they don't have to type in that many figures. They apparently don't like Facebook as much because it's just too much stuff to download. Partnership opportunities obviously can create bigger projects, particularly we had a big carbon project with Cyro. And as far as the proof of concept goes, some of our techniques that we trialled in our projects were the basis for PIRS's New Horizons project they've got now running in the state. So in conclusion, I'll just repeat again what these reviewers found were the key elements for success in these projects. So the projects filled a need of stakeholders, and they addressed priorities to capture their interest, and the information was tailored to local conditions. That was very important. There was often an element of innovation, and the project assisted in changing practices in a practical way. Credible champions endorsed the project, and the support from project partners added value to outcomes. And relationships between NRM and agriculture, from exposure to the issues of each sector, particularly through personal contact, such as field days. Thank you. And I did mean to say that funding for this project came from the South Australian Government State NRM program.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, Wayne's Susan, one of the things that we're seeing, likely to see more of, is an increase in the fire frequency across our rural landscapes. And we have a very good example just north of Adelaide very recently, a very extensive area with very exposed soils. Mm-hmm. Is that the next project to figure out how you manage these soils? Because what I see going on just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think Taryn Mangelsdorf, I'm not sure if she's here at the moment, she's going to be talking on what's been happening with the Pinery Recovery Project, and they have been learning a lot from that, and also from other fire grounds that they've been managing. And so actually there is quite a lot of information available already on managing the soils, and they did do quite a lot with the cultivation. I think it was just very unfortunate. They, straight after the fire, they had some very windy days before they even managed to cultivate to bring the heavier soil to the surface and things. But well, Tim might know more about that, but I believe some of the cultivation has been working. In fact, the one where they did the circular cultivation apparently was working the best.
Apparently that one worked best.
Yeah.
They lose whatever they do, and that's just the unfortunate situation. It's making the best of a really bad situation. Another question?
Back to nature, I'm wondering whether you're mapping indigenous species in an area or have some presentation of the historical incidence of disease in local areas, not disease, but species, to help farmers understand what was there.
I think quite a lot of that is being done with the more of the environmental people in our department. Tim, are you aware of that? Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think there is quite a lot of mapping of indigenous species, but yeah.
That's not the space that we're working in.
Yeah.
Need to work with others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
One more quick question. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know whether they've got satellite phones or something like that, some of the farmers, but yeah, once again, not quite sure.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Susan?